So welcome everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you in our event today on catalytic funding and how to move from grant making to catalytic funding and unlock scalable impact in Ukraine through this method. So I have today for you two fantastic speakers. And also the event is organized by Platform of Reconstruction of Ukraine, which is an initiative of the German government to provide a platform for different actors, starting with foundations, also civil society organizations, governmental agencies, and other actors that work towards Ukraine's reconstruction to provide a space for their dialogue and collaboration. So that's why we have this also platform here to speak and hear others and connect to each other. The other organizer is Foundations for Ukraine, a network of philanthropic organizations that committed to impact in Ukraine and its reconstruction via as well sharing best practices, best funding methodologies. And we are here also with our fantastic speakers. Anastasia Deyeva she's the CEO of Tokarev Foundation. Tokarev Foundation is also a member of Foundations for Ukraine. And I will give in a moment for our speakers to present themselves. And Olena Kalibaba, she's a founder of Ukrainian Social Venture Fund and CLAP Ukraine, also a pioneer in social entrepreneurship in Ukraine. And a little organizational note, so we have a chat here. Whenever you have a comment or a link to share or a question, anything that will help you interact with other participants and with speakers, please gladly share in the chat. I will monitor it. I would kindly ask you not to raise the hand, so because we have a limited time, it would be much harder to navigate through many hands, but I will monitor the chat when there is questions that we will have enough time to explore. I would for sure raise it. Some, if it requires a bit more time, will park and save for the speakers to answer separately if possible. So we'll make it work in the best way for everyone to have your input counted. So please feel free to use the chat. Yes, I think from organizational questions, that's it. Our topic today is catalytic funding and how this can evolve funding strategies of foundations, how this can mobilize resources much better, how this hybrid model of working with businesses and civil society works, and actually what is catalytic funding. Maybe some of you joined to explore what is it first, and some of you might have heard about it, may have visited other events and want to see some best practices and cases. So we hope it will be useful for everyone, for those that worked with this topic and for those that haven't worked with this topic yet. So I would kindly ask our speakers in 2, 3, 4 sentences to present yourself and your organization. And after this intro, I will move to my questions that I prepared for you to guide us through this discussion. If Olena or Nastya, you want to start?
Yes, sure. Olena, do you want to start? Otherwise, I can. First of all, it's such a huge honor to be here today, and thank you so much for the platform, but also for Foundations of Ukraine and everyone who found their amazing, valuable time to join us, because I do believe that this conversation is a unique window of opportunity for all of us to navigate in this time of uncertainty. I'm Anastasia Deyeva. I'm the CEO of Tokarev Foundation, and Tokarev Foundation is a Ukrainian technological philanthropy, meaning that we are private venture philanthropy that is working and navigating through the uncertainty with the attempt to reduce the burden and help to restore or recover, I would say, and invest into human capital of Ukraine. And we are doing this through 3 main directions of our work. We are very niche, but the programs are quite vast because the areas we work at is education, is health, and also what we call leadership programs. But basically, it's international scholarship for our talented youth, but also entrepreneurs and startuppers who work in tech and who want to build their future with Ukraine, in Ukraine, and for Ukraine. So we definitely invest in a very, I would allow myself to say, very expensive but very exclusive scholarship for them to bring this experience, expertise, and knowledge back home. I would say that I feel very applicable, I would say, to this panel of discussion, as my professional journey it has been shaped for the last 15 years on various executive positions in the government of Ukraine, in the biggest international agencies such as UN. And also, I was working as the executive director of the biggest nonprofits of Ukraine. So basically, from the position of deputy minister and executive director of one of the biggest patients organization, which is 100% Life, overcoming the epidemic of HIV and AIDS back in 2018, 2019. I would say that I've always was on the side of solution maker or like provider of social innovator, but I also know the price what you pay to get the funding or to get the fuel or get the partners whom are on the same in the same ship to build the social innovations. And now I feel very humbled and honored to be the CEO of Tokarev Foundation, because with all of this expertise and with all of this experience, I really understand how to actually create this consortium, or how we call them in the team, synergies, which allow us to really implement the social innovations. So today I would love to share some not theoretical, but very practical experience. And I believe that Tokarev Foundation is one of the foundations that started the way of provision of catalytic funding in certain areas. So I will be very willing to share what's working, to my opinion, and what's not. Thank you.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you so much, Anastasia. Olana, if you could share a few opening words about yourself and anything else you want to share with the audience before we jump into discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice to see you, and sorry for being a bit late. Do you hear me well? Good. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I would like to shortly introduce myself. I'm Olena Kalibaba. I'm the CEO of Ukrainian Social Venture Fund, and thank you, Anastasia, for sharing your vision about the catalytic funding. We actually had this discussion with Nastya a year ago. So for our foundation we are positioning ourselves as a first impact fund in Ukraine. And but in general, I think that in classical way of understanding, we are not the real venture, but we are the hybrid of let's say philanthropic and preparation for investment readiness of the companies. I'm originally from C-Lab, Ukraine, is one of the organizations who has more than 10 years working with social entrepreneurship in Ukraine and put a lot of efforts, energy, and money in order to develop this sector. And then once we had up to 100 alumni, social enterprises, we realized that they don't have access to finance in Ukraine. And it happened before the invasion. We just realized it, and we started to find the way how to actually give this access to finance. So that's how the Ukrainian Social Venture Fund was founded. It's founded by 4 organizations, 2 Ukrainian, 2 international, with only one mission, goal, objective is to support financially and non-financially social enterprises and impact businesses. So talking about the catalytic funding, for us is definitely not the charity, but it's a kind of the first risk that unlocks all the others. So we are, that's why we have very diversified portfolio. For the moment, it's 67 companies with very different models and a very different level of development. So it's a bit the step before the companies will be ready to cooperate with venture capital or more serious, let's say, instruments. So that's why in practice for us, it means 3 things. I'm not very academical, sorry. So it's funding proof of concept from our portfolio companies, and we are working with startups, with grow-ups, and with those who are ready to scale. The second is investing in ecosystem infrastructure. So it's not only about the money, it's about the program. I know that Tokarev is also doing the incubation program. We have incubation, acceleration, and separate program for rehabilitation centers. So that's why we put our energy and money in mentorship, impact measurement. So we sharing this knowledge. And legal frameworks. We are working with ministries, we are working with cabinet of ministries, different intersectional groups to define what is social entrepreneurship is and how it can be developed in Ukraine. So it's briefly, that's how we define the catalytic capital in our case.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Olena. I think it was a very important introduction for you both. So our guests today understand where you come from and which background you have and what you can share with us further on. So I want to start with a question, actually a very simple one, but I think it's also very crucial for others to understand because it also perspectives and understanding of catalytic funding can be different for also both of you. Maybe something overlaps, maybe something you understand differently. Could you please expand a bit on this? How do you understand catalytic funding? How do you understand it in your work, in your organizations?
Yeah, that's an incredible question. And I think Olena started to answer it from her incredible perspective. And I have a very deep respect to what Olena had been doing for so many years. Thank you so much. And I think she's a real example of how impact investment can be shaped in a very specific area. And I know that all the people who joined our meeting today are very familiar what Ukraine is and how to work with Ukraine, and maybe lots of you represent either development agencies or maybe DFI or maybe, I don't know, other institutions, and hopefully you either travel to Ukraine or have teams who are working on the ground and can report to you what it is like. But I just want to highlight that Ukraine is currently, my beautiful home, is undergoing the unprecedented full-scale invasion, meaning ongoing war, and simultaneously we have all the type of crisis you can even imagine at the same time: economic, political, health, environment, social, educational, and yada, yada, yada. However, it's really important to understand that this is the 5th year of war, and we are speaking about resiliency, not from the point of view as something emotional to bring, empathy or something. We actually, I think, we are quite grown up to start speaking very pragmatically, like where do we actually stand and what real structural resiliency look like. And I believe that Ukraine is one of those unique countries in the world who can share their examples, but not as a copy-paste template, but actually, like Olena mentioned, proof of concept. Because really what is happening now in the ongoing crisis and under heavy, fragile, I would say, fragility markets in our society is both proof of concept of how to build within the crisis, but also how to rebuild, because the situation is changing all the time. And I want to start that I just got back from Japan, where I had the privilege to introduce the work of Ukrainian Catalytic Capital approach on the stage of Tech for Impact, which is one of the biggest impactful conferences in Asia. And I actually was trying to explain that catalytic capital, in a simple wording, is actually the capital that arrives when everyone are leaving. And catalytic capital, as Olena already rightly mentioned, is a de-risk capital. But when we speak about de-risk capital, this, I totally agree with Anastasia. For different actors, it will mean very different things. When we speak about Ukraine and we speak about de-risk, we should understand that this is the first loss. Capital from private, philanthropic, development, DFIs, corporate institutions, organizations, which are ready to be patient in the time of urgency, which is ready to look at something as Olena also mentioned, ecosystem, not a project, not an initiative, and be ready to play long term. Meaning that catalytic capital basically is kind of a filler or bridge that unites grant with investments and that builds the most important thing. It's definitely not measured by a classical investment metrics. It's not about ROI. You'd never speak about return of investment in 18 months in catalytic capital. It's the first lost capital that brings something really important, the capacity. And when we speak about capacity, it's really about the designing the program of catalytic funding in appropriate way, where you help the local actors to mature, to build infrastructure, to invest in human capital, to raise the capacity reliability. So other donors, grant makers, or at this point, corporate finances and also investments are ready to come. And I think that at this point in Ukraine, catalytic funding is actually playing a very crucial role in financial de-risk because it's really gives the credibility. But unfortunately, we face a very I would say unsolvable problem at the moment with war risk. And catalytic capital is something that may be a tool, but definitely not the whole solution of how to reduce the war risk on the grounds. And I think that today we will be able to talk a bit more about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think it was very interesting to hear how to build and rebuild at the same time. And also that it's a bridge between grant and investment. These two things I want to highlight. Thank you. Olena, you actually started also to expand on this topic. Do you have anything you
Yes, I
want to
just want to add, thank you. Anastasia made a great job summarizing everything. And just the only one thing that in 2024, in the beginning, we started to work it actually was an experiment. We started to work with the blended finance. So what we realized, and still it is let's be honest, it's a still big problem because of availability of different programs, especially with a grant fundament in Ukraine. Even our government, I have a lot of questions to our government and all their reforms and processes, but at the same time, they provide a lot of different opportunities, especially for small and medium businesses, with a kind of, I don't want to call it, to name it grant, but a kind of a national program that stimulates, for example, the creation of job places, the creation of R&D departments, the creation, like the operational cost, with only one condition, that this money should be back in the format of taxes or something. But what we face is that the businesses understanding that they can take grants without any obligation, let's say, it's much easier than to work with more systematic financial support. And of course, from one hand, it's very understandable because we are in a war condition. And honestly, this winter, it was so awful, I can observe it through our portfolio, that a lot of businesses just closed because with all these blackouts, it's impossible to run the business. I mean, so you cannot continue to invest your own money forever. So having this situation, what can we do? And that's, we actually started to face such kind of problems late 2023. Remember, it was also blackouts, and but we decided that it would never be the correct and right time. So that's why we started with our blended finance. The idea is very simple, that it actually was the part of our business model, our fund, that part of the money, we have the blended check. Part of the money is returnable money and we have only the one legal transparent instrument in Ukraine is financial returnable support, but you can provide it without any taxes, interest, only for 12 months. And second part is grant money. But you cannot take only grant money. You can take it both. So by this, we are stimulating our companies to be more financially disciplined from one hand. From another hand, we help them to operate and manage this money, so to return them. And so far, let's my fingers crossed, we have 100 return rate from our companies. So this returnable money unlocks the unreturnable money. And it's a bit a kind of a trick from one hand, but from another hand, we have companies who actually got first grants as a startups, and then they come back to us for the blended finance. So I think in few years they will be ready to take the real credits or loans or even investment money, because they understand now how to operate and how to be financially disciplined, how to monitor them, how to report it. So a lot of this stuff. So that's why when Anastasia mentioned that the catalytic funding, it's not only about the funding. Of course, it's a roadmap, and it's about the ecosystem all together to prepare these companies for the future. Because all this, as I call them, free money, grant money, it would be finished. I mean, or it's already kind of, you need to have a special skills. It's a kind of a new business category in order to work with this money. And definitely, yeah, you need to put some efforts, but still. So that's why we are working with the mechanisms that we are working in order to increase the number of bankable impact businesses in Ukraine.
May I ask for something? Because I think it will be very helpful for the audience. Olena, everyone knows you and the work of the foundation, but maybe you can, in few words, tell who are the main target audience for, like, who is the main audience? Who are those SMEs you work with and you fund? Because I would love to highlight a bit on my perspective how the areas of catalytic funding in Ukraine, which are working and which are not working a little bit. And I hope that this will be a practical, maybe insight for our guests today.
Maybe then I can unite it with my question, if it's okay, Anastasia, because I think it
Sure.
works very well until we open the more practical, going into programs, projects, or that you conduct on both organizations. So my actual question is that I will merge with Anastasia. Is what is the biggest need or gap also in today's funding landscape in Ukraine's recovery? In some specific sphere, or what you want to address with your organization, and what's your target audience? Then let's blend this so you can already give some examples.
Olena, do you want to start?
Now it's your turn.
Thank you, dear. Well, I just want to share a little bit of my perspective, because my team is really rigorously observing how catalytic capital is deployed in Ukraine, in Europe, and also abroad. But from what I see is actually that catalytic capital is doing quite well in two main areas. It's agriculture and energy efficiency. Those are two main, and I'm not speaking about the defense sector because I think it's not the topic of today's discussion. I'm speaking about, like, let's say, general public and civilians areas. So basically, agriculture and energy efficiency, those are the areas where we see the most effective instruments for catalytic capital, with a huge density of DFIs, development financial institutions, as well as development agencies, and lots of course, local and national actors who are engaged. However, here is a trick, because as I mentioned, catalytic funding can do a very well job. And please note that when I say that catalytic capital is doing a well job, I totally agree with Olena. It's not about funding per se. It's about design of the program. How you fund, what is the modality, what kind of results you want to achieve, and I would say your approach should be very agile to understand if you're really moving in the right direction of the capacity building or not. So basically an ecosystem development, what Elena mentioned. So when I say that it's working, it's meaning that we have a very multi-sectoral actors, partners, DFIs, who are providing the guarantee schemes or guarantee models, you can call them, who are providing this blended financing approach for those local businesses or even public-private companies or initiatives who are working in the area of agriculture. However, what Catalytic Capital cannot do is make reduction of the war risk, because military risks, especially which are heavily burdened on the area of the front line and occupied territories, and which are at the same time also the areas of our agriculture production and I would say industrial complexes, they are in a very complicated position, because we understand that the second obstacle is also the density of lots of different actors on the ground who are started to heavily fund those areas, but the others remain unfunded. And it's such a huge disproportion, because it's not about, like big actors. We are speaking about very local actors who doesn't have the access to the capacity development, who doesn't have the access to any type of funding. So I think that that is why I'm asking that I would love to Olena to share with what companies they are working, because they are doing both, and they also have a very nice focus on those territories which are remote and communities which are remote, because this is exactly what Tokarev Foundation is doing. Tokarev Foundation is a private tech philanthropy, meaning that we are in the unique position where we work with the government, with the ministerial organizations, where we work with non-profits, for-profits, and development agencies. And two main areas which we identify as the priority areas for us for catalytic funding is health system as well as educational system. But education not in terms of ed tech, like how to create startups in ed tech so we can reach more kids, but actually how to create the workforce programs which are not let's say, creating the application that can be applicable to everyone, but which can do a very specific thing. How can we analyze what kind of workforce gaps do we have on the grounds, especially in remote areas, and what can we do, and what kind of programs or technologies or development of businesses can really help to raise and to make strong and competent and expertise, but also actually healthy workforce and human capital who see their future in that region. Like if we work with youth, we don't want to provide them with some STEM popularization. We don't want to say that STEM is great, you have to learn how to code. Maybe they don't actually, but we actually analyze if we work in the Dnipro region, which is all about agriculture, steel, like industrial complexes. We have to analyze and actually know the numbers. How many engineers are missing in that region? What can we do? What should we do? How we can mobilize, how we can start to provide youth with those approaches to get this education, but not through theory, but through practices. That is why Tokarev Foundation started to invest first in human capital. And I think it's a very important insight about catalytic capital in Ukraine, because when I speak, and again, Olena mentioned that last year we were on Malmo, and in Malmo, in Impact Europe, we participate in this amazingly insightful conference about impact investment worldwide. But we are still, a bit of black sheep or white crown in the crowd, because when we speak, we say, we totally agree with you, like in theory, or maybe in safe, I would say more safer European countries, you can really install those approaches of impact investment with those metrics, with those SDGs. But when you operate in a fragile, underserved and like communities in crisis, the metrics should be different and the approach should be different. It doesn't mean that you have to just dive deep into risk. No, it just means that the lens that you use should be different. And to my perspective, the most important reversion is that classical reconstruction model says first infrastructure. So basically you build bridges, you build roads, you build schools, and then you fund people. Our model is very different. It's literally reverse. First, we invest in human capital, then the infrastructure follows. And I will give you one of the examples in health. So basically, in the remote areas, lots of you know, especially which are close to the front lines or deoccupied, we really don't have hospitals and we don't have schools, because those and maternity houses, also we don't have elderly houses or those facilities which we are taking care of the elder population in the rural area, but also cities. And basically at the moment we're in the situation where we have so many local amalgamated communities which are lacking those infrastructure, hospitals and schools. What do? We do understand that it's still a very war risk heavy like you say, zone where funders, investors, or even development agencies can come. That is why I think that this approach of the investment into the workforce development or human capital development is extremely important, because if you really invest into a woman entrepreneur and learn her, but like really, teach her how to become a health tech entrepreneur, not like, create an initiative or create an NGO, but actually how to make a business, how to unite those medical workers who work there, how to unite those IT specialists or engineers who are there, how to make this business savviness around telemedicine. She will find a way how to make the access to the healthcare services in her community. And I think that that's actually shifting the metrics of successfulness, or what we call ROI, in our regard so far. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, but I think that this is something we should all consider when we speak about underserved communities in Ukraine.
Super. Thank you so much, Stasia. You actually answered my even next question on like locally led initiatives. You already mentioned quite some examples. And then now let's move to Olena and what do you see as the gaps in Ukraine's recovery and how you can address them in your organization? What target audience you briefly already started answering this, but also what Nasta asked. And I want to integrate one more question we have fantastic questions in the chat. And there is one that could actually serve as an addition to the question talking about your programs, about first loss, how to balance the high probability of financial failure with responsibility to show scalable results. Because I guess when you will talk about organizations you work with businesses you work with, maybe it also can integrate in a part of your answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anastasia, both of you. I actually a bit started to talk about this regarding the gaps. So because we have huge access to grant programs from one side, from another side we have availability of the governmental programs and non very high motivated SMEs which actually don't want to take risk and use the existing financial instruments. So that's why in our case, we are using blended, as I said, only with one aim, to help them to be more mature, more responsible, and more bankable. But at the same time, because I promise I remember Nastya questions regarding with whom we are working exactly, because the focus of our fund is social entrepreneurship. So we are working with the social enterprises and we are working with the impact business. We differentiate them. Social enterprises, we are following the classical definition that this is a business has been created with intention to solve social problem or ecological problems through business processes or business activities. Impact businesses, I cannot say that we invent this term, but we started to differentiate it a bit from social enterprises because it's a kind of segment that started to increase during the or after the full-scale invasion. It's ordinary or classical, let's say classical businesses who started with volunteer or charity or humanitarian activities. Then they realize that it actually takes a lot of time, money, people, resources, and they try to understand how to manage with this because obviously that all people in Ukraine right now, you cannot be ahead, you cannot ignore it. So somehow you involved in solving of all these challenges that we have today. And some businesses come to us with requests like, could you train us? Could you help us to understand what is this, how to plan it, how to budgeting it, and how to integrate it in our business processes? So do not create a non-profit, but continue to be business. And we call these businesses impact businesses. So impact driven because they're ready to integrate the impact strategy and to make it systematic, regular process in their companies. So, and these two, this is two segments that we are working with. We have our policies and criteria. We are not providing money or support only for non-profits or businesses. It should be impact strategy inside with all indicators, with theory of change. And we understand that it's like a new skill. And that's why our programs, acceleration and incubation programs, it's a kind of a pipeline which help to which help companies to design this impact strategy, to understand if they are ready, and then to pitch in front of our investment committee, and then get or not get money. So that's.
If I may ask, actually, if you could name 1-2 examples of such businesses, so also for our audience to understand very practically.
Yeah, okay. So right now we have, that's the last cohort, we have the VR Mentality is a technological company which are working with VR technologies in order to decrease the PTSD level, and they are working with psychiatrists, sorry, so not psychologists, but they're working with doctors. So they combine the conservative treatment and this technology because they developed the special console or dashboard for doctors. They're working right now with 2 triggers, with sound and with picture. But for the moment, they are working on a 3rd trigger as well. It will be SANS. So, and they have clinical research. They started with it together. They made it together with the National Institute Bogomolza, and they had the clinical research on 80 military and veterans to understand how it will work. So they proved their concept, and then they started their scaling. So right now they integrated in state and private rehabilitation centers and clinics. And we are working both on attracting the new investments, because definitely right now, in order to add the 3rd trigger, it will take time and a bit coding and adjustment. So that's one example. Now they're also working on it's a new direction. It's work with kids. And with adaptability, they also going to use the VR technologies. Then another case, I don't know, maybe I mentioned it before. It's and another, it's not technological. Okay, from the last cohort, it's an organization, and they have a kind of a holding, the non-profit organization and LLC. They are creating the linen, but what they did, the model is very interesting. The founder is a lady. She has 4 kids. She realized that in her community is a lot of moms with kids with disabilities, and they cannot alone, I mean, without husbands, and they cannot find the job because they cannot leave. Sometimes it's a let's say heavy disabilities, so they need to be with their kids. So that's why with her husband they bought the special equipment for creating the linen, and they train first these women, and then they put all this equipment in their homes and give them job, give them work. So for the moment they have up to 8 women, and you see the level and the differences between 2 companies that we support. So right now they want to scale to another regions because it's actually a workable model, how to self-employed such kind of categories that especially right now is really hard to find a job. So that's 2 examples that we are supported for the last year.
Excellent. Can I ask, Anastasia, you also, if being mindful of the time, since we also have a short evaluation after the talk to save us some time until for that, maybe you could give also one example from your work.
I think I will compliment Elena because as I started, I believe that health area is really under not very good attention, I would say, at the moment. And I think it's also a very reciprocal work where we need to have a demand from the communities itself, you know, like who are stating this is the problems, this is solutions we want to create, or this is what we need to do, help us, or here is the solutions we are ready to provide. And the international or national actually actors are ready to come with the like fuel how to do it, right? And I totally agree with Olena that it's not about funding only per se. It's all about like designing of the program that will actually lead us from one stage of readiness to another stage of readiness. Because usually catalytic funding, I mean, when we speak about it in Ukraine, unfortunately, we have to start with the very, like beginning. We really need to start and prepare people with education, with the business savviness, with let's say preparedness of the capacity maturity to grow into something more conventional, I would say. But the example I wanted to give is in health tech. Talkative Foundation, under our umbrella, we have a university, which is a licensed academia, which is called SET University. SET University is a university that provides master degrees to entrepreneurs who are working in cybersecurity, AI engineering, in different type of, tech specializations, I would say. Jointly with SET University, 3 years ago, we started the first national health tech incubator or accelerator, you can call it whatever you want, for early stage startups. Because Ukrainian health tech is quite interesting. We have a really mastodons, I would say, or like giants of the companies who work with big data. We have eHealthy, we have Healthy, we have Dr. Alex, we have lots of different actors, Medicom, all the who are really well integrated into national or corporate segments. However, the problem is not only data, I would say big data. The problem is in so many areas, and health tech can provide the solutions right here and right now. But Ukraine has to understand how first to create teams, because when we speak about health tech, it's all about the viability of the team. When you have a health practitioner, when you have a scientist, where you have the engineer, data engineering, IT specialist, and entrepreneur, and you find out what kind of business model will really apply the solution and if you will have customers, right? So basically, this health tech accelerator was very well supported by the Ministry of Health, of course, and also we've cooperated with the biggest incubators in Ukraine to accumulate those who are interested in creation of sustainable businesses and solutions to provide the catalytic funding or investments in the future. And what we saw is that at the moment in Ukraine, the number of health problems are so high, and people can be so innovative from the area. They can come up with some solutions which had not been practiced anywhere in the world. And Olena gave an example of how they work with PTSD related issues. I would also name one of the mental health solutions. So in year one, we had a company which is called Anima, and Anima is a neuro tracker. Basically, it's a company that that looks how your eye movement can give you the preliminary diagnostics of certain psychological states, but also psychiatrical states, PTSD, burnout, anhedonia, and also depression. It is a very effective and very objective, validated medical pre-screening, I would say. And their business model was not ready to be deployed yet, but the solution was there and the product was there. And we decided why wouldn't we match the need and match the business solution? What we did a pilot. We invited the rehabilitation program, the rehabilitation center, which is working with the most affected by the war women and their kids who suffered the occupation, captivity, losses, sex crimes, and so on. I can continue. And we knew that actually the rehabilitation, or I would call stabilization interventions for these women, is really expensive. And one of our hypotheses was, what if we take the technological screening, which will help to take off the load from those psychologists and psychiatrists who are working there? What if we will give the instrument which will help actually the practitioners to do their job even better? And we married them. So basically we married the technology and the rehabilitation. And based on this pilot, we conducted the observatory study, which was not a clinical study, but which was based on the facility and allowed us to get the data, protected data, to verify and validate the hypothesis. After the project, we realized a few things. First, technology really works. Second, and works in the sense of effectiveness. Technology can really help to reduce the burden from the psychiatrists and psychologists who unfortunately now in Ukraine is very overloaded. And consequently, there are some psychologists who has 100 clients per the session, not the session per day, but like per their work. And it's a huge amount of different cases that a human being who is a professional has to undergo. And with the technology for the pre-screening, actually their load can reduce for 30%, meaning they will have more time, and we will actually try to prevent the burnout of these first responders or practitioners, right? Second is that we really showed and we calculated that it will be cheaper. The intervention, I mean, the unit cost per patient will be cheaper because you will have this technological assistant, which is unbiased, objective, which will provide you a clear picture. And you as a psychologist or psychiatrist will be navigating through how to build the route for this patient, right? And thirdly, which was a bit tricky, but still I will name it. Consequently, we understand that there are so many, it's a high demand of services, psychological rehabilitation and stabilization for those who are most affected by the war. We understand the interventions are quite expensive. We understand that there is a lack of professionals. And the most important thing is how you identify who urgently need this help and who are actually not in the, I would call it, red zone. I really want everyone to receive the help, but we understand that there are some people with who has maybe suicide thoughts, or maybe have some other, like nosologies, which are coming intertwined. And the technology showed that actually the sorting of the patient can be better if you use technology, because still when you do the human screening, when you do the self-screening or screening with observative psychiatrist, the gap between the objectiveness is still quite high. So basically, the people who are not in red zone may become like in this cohort when others are remained, like in the waiting list. And
very sorry.
yes, sorry. Yes, I just wanted to show that it's all about ecosystem. When you have the academia, when you have accelerating system, where you have business which is actually working, and you can have enough data for the investors to take their attention and understand how to provide catalytic funding for such businesses to grow to the maturity and then to be invested. Sorry.
No, all good. It's perfect. I actually I didn't want to stop you, but I should, I wish I would have 2 hours with both of you. Maybe, Marius, we should have one more follow-up event on this topic. There's a lot to explore, or even take different spheres. But thank you so much, Elena and Anastasia. This was fantastic. And I would ask our dear participants to fill in a short evaluation form. I will ask a colleague from Platform of Reconstruction to share a poll. It will appear on the screen. It's short, very short questions, so I very kindly ask you to fill them in, because you would share with us if it was useful for you. The second question, if you got some interesting contacts, or if you met someone in the chat. I saw there were some examples of programs appearing that you can still go back to and check. And there is a link to the group of Platform with Platform of Reconstruction that Marius posted that you can join. The last question, if you have any ideas for the next events. So if you want to see more of this topic, please leave your suggestion. It's very short. Let's give it a few minutes, and then I will announce the other events for May that the platform has planned. Great, we have some answers already. Fantastic. I want to just encourage also for you to check the chat. There were some also nice examples that, for example, Martin shares of a new initiative in Germany, German-Ukraine initiative. Also, Marius shared the link to the LinkedIn group, where we can bring this also conversation to the written posts and discussions. Fantastic. Could I please ask a colleague from the platform to share a slide about the next events that we can also announce? So there will be an event coming in the end of May on the 20th about cities and regions in focus in Zaporizhia this time. So it's a series of events on different Ukrainian cities and initiatives and focuses which are important for the community. And on 27th, there is an event online on energy security and strategic resilience in wartime Ukraine. This is still, of course, always a topic, as Olena mentioned in the beginning. The terrible winter is behind, but we already need to prepare for this to happen again and again. So this is a very crucial topic all year round. So please join and find also contacts. If you have any question, any suggestion, here you have the information email and the LinkedIn group you can join. I want to say thank you again to our wonderful speakers. Again, I wish I would have much more time with you, but I think it was a fantastic introduction to Catalytic Capital, and you managed so well to first introduce this as a concept, but also then deep dive into what Ukraine needs right now, what it is lacking, where is the gap, how do you address this gap in your organizations, and also closing with an examples was very valuable. I think it also helped our audience to understand much more what it is, and they also of course, encourage everyone to check websites of both organizations and contact our fantastic speakers as well. Find them on the website, on LinkedIn, and continue building partnerships, because only together we can achieve a great impact for Ukraine when we build these networks and we build alliances. So let's do it together, because then we are one united front. Thank you so much.